So our topic is monitoring cognitive service activity. The monitoring section of the cognitive service resource plate in Azure portal includes 4 areas that you can use for monitoring of your resource. These include alerts, metrics, diagnostic settings, and logs. Now, let's first talk about alerts. So, Microsoft Azure provides a robust alerting and monitoring solution called Azure Monitor. You can use Azure Monitor to configure notifications and alert for your key systems and applications. These alerts will ensure that the correct team knows when the problem arises. Now, every alert or notification available in Azure Monitor is a product of some rule. Some of these rules are built into Azure platform. You can use alert rules to create custom alerts and notifications. No matter which target resource or data source you use, the composition of an alert rule remains the same. Now let's talk about metrics. So metrics are numerical values that describe some aspect of a system at a point in time. Azure Monitor can capture metrics in real time. The metrics are collected at regular intervals and are useful for alerting because of frequent sampling. You can use a variety of algorithms to compare a metrics to other metrics and observe trends over time. Now, metrics are stored in a time series database. This data store is most effective for analyzing the timestamp data. Metrics are suited for alerting and fast detection of rules. They can tell you about system performance if needed. You can combine them with logs to identify the root cause of issues as well. Now, if we talk about diagnostic settings, you can configure diagnostic settings in your cognitive service resources to provide detailed information for diagnostics and auditing. The platform logs and metrics will be sent to a logging destination that you choose when configuring the settings. The available data that can be logged include audit information, request response data, and all metrics. Currently, you can have the diagnostic information sent to a log analytics workspace, event hubs, or Azure storage. Each diagnostic setting that you configure can only send data to one destination. If you need to send data to more than one destination, you will need to configure a new diagnostic setting for that destination. Now, the diagnostic settings include Log Analytics Workspace, Event Hubs, and Azure Storage. Now, let's talk about logs. So, logs contain time-stamped information about changes made to resources. The type of information recorded varies by log source. The log data is organized into records with different set of properties for each type of record. The log can include numeric values such as Azure Monitor metrics, but most include text data rather than the numeric values. The most common type of log entry records an event, and events are created by applications and services which provides the context for the events. You can store metrics data in logs to combine them with other monitoring data for analysis. Your log data from Azure in a log analytics workspace. Azure provides an analysis engine and a rich query language. The logs show the context of any problem and are useful for identifying the root cause. Now, moving forward, let's talk about the cognitive service and containers. So, containers allow you to host the Azure cognitive service either on-premise or on Azure. For example, if your application uses data in an on-premise SQL server, you can deploy the cognitive service in containers or the same network. Now your data can stay in your local network and not move in on the cloud. Deploying cognitive service in a container on-premise will also decrease the latency between the service and your local data. This can dramatically improve the performance because internet bandwidth is not involved. You can deploy cognitive service container in any container host, for example, a local Docker host, an Azure container instance, an Azure Kubernetes service cluster, etc. The ability to run a cognitive service in a container enables different deployment scenarios that can meet a variety of organizational security policies. There are Docker containers ready for you to use in the Microsoft Container Registry. Each container provides a subset of cognitive service functionality. For example, not all features of the language service are in a single container. Language detection, translation, and sentiment analysis are each separate container images. However, the setup steps are similar to each container. After your cognitive service container is deployed, application consumes the containerized cognitive service endpoint rather than the default Azure endpoint. This means that any data exchange between the client application and the containerized service is not sent to the Azure resource endpoint. However, the container still needs to be able to connect to the Azure resource endpoint in order to submit usage metrics for billing. So this is all about cognitive services and containers.